Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive collision, an unstoppable force, big tech's unbelievable financial scale crashing into an immovable object, which is global antitrust regulation. We're looking at a truly fascinating landscape here in 2026, where the sheer size and blistering speed of technological advancements from top companies are actively challenging the very legal frameworks designed to govern them.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with the trillion-dollar tech titans, move right into the global antitrust crackdown, explore the AI regulatory battleground, dig into a real-world case study on Tesla Autopilot, and wrap it all up with innovation versus regulation. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1, trillion-dollar tech titans. So looking at May 2026 data from AlphaSense, it's pretty wild. Nvidia is sitting at the absolute top of the global market. Right on its heels, we've got Alphabet and Apple. We aren't just talking about large companies here. These valuations literally rival the gross domestic product of entire nations. Just look at Nvidia's valuation, an absolute behemoth at $4.60 trillion. To put that massive scale into perspective, if Nvidia were a country, it would be one of the largest economies on Earth, slotting in right behind Japan or Germany. It's crazy, and they're leading a global top 10 list that is almost entirely dominated by the tech sector, with Berkshire Hathaway being the only non-tech exception. This kind of absolute dominance is driven by super adaptable business models, massive global reach, and of course, constant innovation in artificial intelligence, which is just fueling incredible revenue growth.
Moving on to Section 2, global antitrust crackdown.
But with all that money comes an intense amount of scrutiny. These tech titans are practically fighting a multi-front global war right now. Based on the 2026 antitrust report from Wilson Sonsini, the pressure is coming from everywhere. You've got Google battling the U.S. Department of Justice over its search dominance, plus the European Commission over its ad deck. Meta is fighting the U.S. Federal Trade Commission over its acquisitions of WhatsApp and Instagram. Meanwhile, Apple is taking intense heat from the UK's Competition and Markets Authority and the European Commission regarding its mobile platforms. It's the whole shebang.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark difference in how the US and Europe are actually tackling this. In the US, it's all about these huge, complex court battles over existing monopolies. Like in the Google search case, the DOJ sought out aggressive structural remedies, though the court actually rejected the most severe ones because, well, it's incredibly tough to untangle illegal conduct from just lawful innovation. Europe, on the other hand, is taking a totally proactive route. They're issuing proactive regulations and fines under new digital frameworks like the Digital Markets Act. They're assigning gatekeeper status to large platforms and enforcing strict conduct requirements before a monopoly abuse even sees a courtroom. For you, this literally means the apps and platforms you use every day might function completely differently depending on which side of the Atlantic you live on.
And these actions carry massive financial weight. The European Commission hit Google with a staggering €2.95 billion fine back in September 2025. That's roughly $3.19 billion US dollars. They found that Google abused its dominant position by favoring its own ad exchange service, AdX. It's a huge signal, right? International bodies are absolutely not hesitating to drop huge financial penalties to enforce these new digital rules.
Which brings us to Section 3, the AI regulatory battleground.
This is where things get really tricky, and the courts are openly admitting they're struggling. As one U.S. District Court judge put it when talking about generative AI during the Google case, it's the possibility of the next digital frontier, posing a potential threat in the future. The emergence of generative AI is just moving so fast that regulators are stuck trying to figure out how to craft remedies without totally suffocating future innovations that might not even fully exist yet. Think about it. During the 2023 liability trial, generative AI was just a glimmer of an idea, but by 2025, the court had to officially acknowledge it as the possible next digital frontier. It just shows how fast technological destruction happens while courts are still actively examining these markets.
So from examining generative AI as a search competitor to probing entirely new issues, AI has essentially become the ultimate regulatory minefield. On one side, you have the DOJ trying to expand data sharing remedies to include qualified AI firms. On another front, federal enforcers are probing alleged viewpoint discrimination, looking impartially into what executive orders have termed woke AI output. And it's a global issue too. Italy and the European Commission are actively investigating Meta for pre-installing its AI chatbot on WhatsApp. Plus, we're seeing this growing, really intense conflict between state and federal authorities over exactly how to handle AI acquisitions and regulations. All right, let's ground this with a specific example. In Section 4, Case Study, Tesla Autopilot.
To really grasp how these trillion-dollar ambitions hit the physical world, we have to look at Tesla's relentless hardware evolution. They rely purely on cameras and neural networks, completely ignoring LiDAR, which Elon Musk famously called stupid and expensive. But to process all that visual data, you need mind-boggling computing power. We've seen them jump from hardware 3 in 2019 to hardware 4 in 2023, which brought 3 to 8 times more computational capability, all the way to targeting AI 5 or hardware 5 for early 2027. That one is projected to be 10 times more powerful than hardware 4. The sheer scale of development is staggering.
Now, Tesla rolls out these advanced driver assistance systems, or ADAS, in tiers. It's like stepping stones. You start at the base with autopilot, handling your basic adaptive cruise control and keeping the car in its lane. Next step up is enhanced autopilot that adds automatic parking and navigating highway interchanges. And at the very top, you have full self-driving, or FSD supervised, which brings the system onto local roads to actually read traffic lights and stop signs. But remember, despite the catchy name, Tesla still strictly classifies this as a Level 2 system, meaning it requires continuous driver supervision.
Unlike a lot of their competitors who rely heavily on lab simulations and highly detailed maps, Tesla just uses real human drivers on real roads. And the volume of data they've collected is insane. By May 2026, Tesla vehicles had driven an astounding 10 billion miles with FSD supervised engaged. That breaks down to 6.3 billion miles on highways and, crucially, 3.7 billion miles on highly unpredictable, complex city streets. And all that massive real-world data collection, that's exactly what fueled their commercial robotaxi service. Tesla has been successfully transitioning this AI from a beta software in consumer cars into a physical ride-hailing business. They did a geofence launch in Austin back in June 2025 for invited users with an employee in the car. By August, they expanded to San Francisco, still requiring a safety driver for legal reasons. But by January 2026, the real leap happened. They achieved fully driverless operations in Austin, and they are aggressively expanding across multiple states like Texas, California, Nevada, and Arizona.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Innovation versus Regulation. So getting these vehicles onto public roads is where the rubber literally meets the road, and the contrast is pretty stark. On one hand, Tesla's internal stats claim they see just one airbag deployment every 3.2 million miles on FSD, which is far safer than the national baseline. But federal regulators disagree. The NHTSA investigated and linked autopilot to hundreds of collisions and 13 fatalities over a 3-year probe, heavily criticizing the lack of system safeguards against driver abuse. Yet, in a really interesting twist, the NHTSA also noted in May 2026 that these very same recent Tesla models were the first to actually pass the agency's strict new 2027 safety benchmarks for advanced driver assistance systems.
What we're witnessing here is a massive, historic friction point. We have rapidly updating neural networks, systems that learn and rewrite their own code based on billions of miles of data, crashing headfirst into the deliberate, slow-moving mechanisms of antitrust law and government safety agencies. Whether it's the DOJ trying to define a brand new market for generative AI or the NHTSA trying to measure the safety of a self-driving car that updates over the air while it's parked in your garage, the old rules are absolutely struggling to contain this new reality.
So this all leaves us with an absolutely critical question about our technological future. Can traditional regulatory frameworks adapt fast enough to effectively govern an intelligence that updates itself overnight? As big tech pushes these trillion-dollar ambitions further into our digital lives and onto our physical streets, this intense tension between innovation and regulation is absolutely going to be the defining story of the decade. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your eyes on the road ahead.